On a simple road, a young woman lives between daily effort and faith in better days. Even with little, she carries a peace that many can never achieve, until a wealthy man crosses her path and begins to see everything differently. And this encounter transforms not only his vision, but the course of his own life. If you like stories of love and romance, watch until the end and you won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave your comment saying where you are listening to this beautiful story from. We continue. The morning heat already announced another scorching day in the Pernambuco Sertão when Manuela opened her eyes even before the alarm clock rang. 5:15 in the morning. The same time as always, that ritual that had been repeated for almost 7 years, ever since her father had passed away and left the responsibility of supporting the house on her young shoulders. She stood up in silence, barefoot on the cold, burnt cement floor, and walked to the small bathroom at the back of the house. The cold water from the shower woke her up completely, washing away the fatigue that insisted on remaining even after a full night's sleep. Upon stepping out, she found her mother, Donna Celia, already sitting in the kitchen, her trembling hands holding a cup of black coffee. The arthritis had worsened in recent months, turning simple gestures into small daily battles. Manuela kissed the top of her mother's greying head and took her place at the stove where she had already separated everything she would need the night before. The starch for the tapiocas, the already grated coconuts, the fruits washed and chopped for the juices, the coalho cheese cut into perfect slices. There was no room for improvisation in Manu's routine. Every movement was calculated, economical, the result of years of perfecting the process. She lit the fire, heated the iron griddle her father had custom-made years ago, and began preparing the first tapiocas of the day. The smell of coconut burning at the edges invaded the kitchen, that sweet aroma that always made her remember her childhood, when she helped her father at the fair on Sundays. At 6:30, when the sun began to paint the sky orange over the dry hills, Manuela already had her 1997 Combi loaded. The white vehicle, stained with rust on the sides, was another legacy from her father. It had over 20 years on the road, but Manu took care of it as if it were new. She changed the oil on time, checked the tires every week, kept everything running because she knew there was no money for another one. That Combi was more than transport. It was her breadwinner, her work tool, the means by which she supported her mother and maintained her dignity. The PE060 road, which connected Caruaru to Bezerros, was her territory. A 23-kilometer stretch she knew by heart, every pothole, every curve, every tree on the shoulder. She had chosen that strategic point 3 years ago after testing several places. There, in a wide escape area well before the entrance to Bezerros, many cars coming from Recife passed by. Executives going to meetings in the interior, truck drivers on regional routes, commercial representatives. People in a hurry, but who sometimes stopped to eat something quick and tasty. She parked the Combi in the same place as always, lowered the rear tailgate that served as a counter, spread out the canvas cover that protected from the sun, and organized everything with the care of someone who transforms an improvised stall into something dignified. At 7 in the morning she was ready, with the griddle heated, the fresh ingredients, the plastic cups stacked, the styrofoam box with ice for the juices. And faith, always faith. Manuela had the habit of saying a silent prayer before starting the day. She gave thanks for the opportunity, asked for protection for whoever passed through there, and prayed for strength to face another day. Her faith was simple, direct, without frills. Learned from her mother, cultivated in Sunday masses at the Church of São José, strengthened in difficulties. It was what kept her standing when her body asked for rest, when bills were tight, when the loneliness of the road weighed heavy. The first customers arrived early. Seu Antonio, the truck driver from Garanhuns, who passed by every Tuesday and always ordered 2 dried meat and cheese tapiocas. Joanna, the teacher who taught in Bezerros and stopped for a freshly blended acerola juice. Every person who stopped had a name, had a story, and Manu made a point of remembering. She treated everyone with the same genuine smile, the same attention, regardless of how much they spent. The morning movement was slow that Tuesday. Few cars, even fewer customers. Manu took advantage of the intervals to prepare more batter, wash the utensils, reorganize the stock. She didn't allow herself to stand still. Constant work was also a way of not thinking too much, of not letting the worry about the month's bills take over her mind. It was almost noon when she heard a different sound, a powerful engine, the deep growl of a luxury car completely out of place with the usual flow of the road. She looked up and saw a black BMW approaching. She thought it would pass straight through, as usually happened with cars of that type. People with money didn't usually stop at roadside stalls, but the car slowed down, signaled, and parked a few meters from the combi. The door opened, and out came a man who looked like he had stepped out of a magazine. Tall, well-cut black hair, a professionally groomed beard, a light blue dress shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows, tailored trousers, and Italian shoes that probably cost more than Manu's entire stock. He wore dark sunglasses and carried a cell phone in his hand, his brow furrowed in concentration as he typed something. Manuela wiped her hands on her apron and waited. She wasn't the type to call out to customers. She had too much pride for that. If the person wanted to, they would come. If they didn't, they would drive on. The man put the phone in his pocket and walked to the stall, still with sunglasses covering his eyes. He looked at the handwritten menu on a blackboard hanging on the side of the combi. Plain tapioca, tapioca with coconut, tapioca with cheese, tapioca with dried meat, mixed tapioca, acerola, cashew, guava, passion fruit juices, honest, fair prices. "Good morning," he said, and his voice was deep, polite, with a soft Recife accent. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "What do you recommend?" Manu suppressed a smile. Outsiders always ask that question as if there were a secret. "Everything here is good because it's made to order with fresh ingredients. But if it's your first time, I'd say try the mixed tapioca, dried meat, coalho cheese and coconut, and an acerola juice." He took off his glasses, and Manu found herself facing intense light brown eyes that studied her with a curiosity she didn't know how to interpret. "Then I will trust your recommendation." She nodded and turned to the already hot griddle. She spread the starch with quick, precise movements, waited for it to firm up, added the generous filling, and folded it into the perfect edges that were her trademark. The cheese sizzled as it touched the hot iron, releasing that unmistakable aroma. In less than 3 minutes, the tapioca was ready, wrapped in parchment paper, served on a disposable plate. Meanwhile, she blended the juice in the old blender that made an infernal noise but never failed. Acerola with cold water and the right amount of sugar. She served it in a large cup with a straw. "Ready," she said, placing everything on the improvised counter. The man took the tapioca, took the first bite, and Manu saw something change in his expression. His eyes closed for a moment, as if he were savoring not just the food, but the memory of something distant. "Wow," he said after swallowing. "It's been a long time since I've eaten something like this." "Simple food but made with care," Manu replied without false modesty. He ate in silence, standing beside the car, watching the empty road, the merciless sun, the dry trees on the horizon. When he finished, he drank the juice all at once, like someone who was truly thirsty. "How much is it?" Manu told him the price. He took a leather wallet from his back pocket and held out a 50 real bill for a 12 real tab. "I don't have change for that bill right now," she said honestly. "Then keep the change." "I don't work for tips," Manu replied, firm but not rude. "You can pay by card if you like, I have the machine, or come back another day and settle it." The man looked at her for a long moment, and there was something in that look that Manu couldn't decipher. Respect, perhaps. Surprise. He put the 50 real bill away and took his phone, bringing it close to her machine. "I like your attitude," he said as the transaction was processed. "It's just honesty. I learned it from my father." "He taught you well." Manu didn't answer. It still hurt to talk about her father in the past tense. The man adjusted his glasses back on his face and walked toward the car. With his hand already on the handle, he turned around. "Are you here every day?" "Tuesday to Saturday, 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon." He nodded, got into the car and drove off, leaving behind only a trail of dust on the road and a strange sensation in Manuela's chest. She didn't know how to explain what it was. Perhaps just the natural curiosity of someone seeing someone so different from the usual. Or maybe it was something else, something she didn't want to name because she had learned not to create expectations. In the following days, Manu forgot about the man in the black car. She had more urgent things occupying her mind. The electricity bill was too high. Her mother's medicines had gone up in price. The combi was making a strange noise in the engine that needed to be checked. These were the concrete, immediate concerns that filled her thoughts. That's why she was surprised when, the following Thursday, she saw the same black BMW park next to the stall. Same time, almost noon. And out came the same man, now wearing a white shirt and jeans, more casual but still visibly expensive in every detail. "Good morning again," he said with a half-smile. "Good morning. Did you forget something here?" "No, I just came back because the tapioca really was good." This time he ordered the dried meat one without coconut, and he stayed there, leaning against the combi, eating slowly, without the rush Manu would expect from someone like him. He asked questions, where the ingredients were from, how long she had been there, if business was good. Simple questions, but asked with genuine interest. Manu answered without giving him much rope. She wasn't the type to open up easily, especially to strangers, but there was something in the way he listened, really listened, that made her feel it wasn't just polite conversation. When he left, Manu had the feeling that this would repeat, and it did. The following Tuesday, the black car was there, and on Thursday, and the week after, 3 times. Always at the same time, always ordering something different, always staying a little longer. It was in the 4th week that he finally introduced himself. "My name is Felipe, by the way. Felipe Augusto. Manuela, but everyone calls me Manu." "Pleasure, Manu." She wiped her hand on her apron before shaking the one he extended. His hand was large, warm, firm. Hers was small, calloused by work. The handshake lasted only a second, but it left a mark. "Can I ask a personal question?" Felipe said, still standing there, unhurried. "Depends on the question." "Why do you do this? Staying here on the road under this sun, working so hard?" Manu could have given a short defensive answer, but something in his tone, in the way he asked without judgment, only curiosity, made her answer honestly. "Because it's what I know how to do, and because there are people at home who depend on me." "Your family?" "My mother, she's sick, she can't work, it's just me." Felipe nodded, pensive. "And your father?" "He died 7 years ago, heart attack." "I'm sorry." "Me too, every day." There was a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just respectful. "You have courage," Felipe said finally. "Many people in your situation would have given up. Giving up isn't an option when people are counting on you." He looked at her in a way that made Manu avert her eyes to the griddle, pretending she needed to clean it. There was too much intensity in that gaze, an admiration she didn't know how to receive. "Do you eat lunch?" Felipe asked suddenly. "What do you mean?" "You stay here until 4 in the afternoon. But do you eat lunch at some point?" "I bring a lunchbox from home." "Let me take you to lunch at a real restaurant." Manu stopped what she was doing and faced him. "Why?" "Because I wanted to talk more with you. And because I think you deserve to sit at a table and be served at least once. I don't need favors from anyone." "It's not a favor, it's an invitation. Do you accept or not?" The answer should have been no. Obvious, automatic, safe. A rich man appearing out of nowhere wanting to take a poor woman to lunch was never a good idea. Manu knew that. She had learned it watching friends get hurt, hearing stories at church, living in a world where intentions weren't always pure. But there was something different about Felipe, something she couldn't name. The way he came back week after week, how he looked at her, not as someone looking down, but as an equal. How he asked about her life without invading, without judging. "It's all right," she heard her own voice say, surprising herself. "But it has to be quick. I can't leave the stall closed for long." The smile that spread across Felipe's face was genuine, almost childlike in its joy. "I know a place 10 minutes from here. Homemade food, simple. I think you'll like it." And so it was, on that Thursday in November, under the scorching sun of the Pernambuco Sertão, that Manuela accepted lunch with a stranger who was becoming less of a stranger, without knowing that decision would change her life in ways she could never imagine. The restaurant Felipe chose was at the entrance to Bezerros, a simple place called Tempero d'Avo, with wooden tables worn by time and checkered plastic tablecloths. It wasn't the kind of establishment Manu imagined someone like him would frequent, but that was exactly what made her feel more at ease. There was the smell of home-cooked food in the air, large pots on the wood stove, that welcoming atmosphere of someone who cooks with soul. They sat at a table in the corner, away from the bustle of the entrance. An elderly woman with white hair came to take the order, and Felipe asked her to bring the dish of the day for both of them. Manu observed how polite he was to the lady, how he thanked her with genuineness, without that automatic politeness of someone accustomed to being served. These were small details, but they said a lot. While they waited for the food, a silence settled between them. It wasn't uncomfortable, but there was an unspoken weight, a mutual awareness that this was different. Manu toyed with the paper napkin, folding and unfolding it, looking for something to do with her hands. Felipe watched her with an attention that made her feel exposed, as if he could see past the barriers she always kept raised. "Why do you keep coming back?" Manu asked suddenly, deciding there was no point in pretending this was normal. Felipe took a deep breath as if preparing for an honest answer. "At first it was just the tapioca. I swear. I stopped because I was hungry. I liked it. I thought about coming back. But later, it started to be because of you." "Because of me?" "Because of the way you work, how you treat people, how you don't apologize for who you are." He paused, choosing his words. "I spent a long time surrounded by people who pretend all the time, who wear masks, who say what they think I want to hear. Not you. You are real." Manu felt the heat rise up her neck, but kept her voice steady. "I don't have the energy to be anyone other than who I am." And that is exactly what caught my attention. The food arrived before she had to respond. Fluffy white rice, well-seasoned macaça beans, sun-dried meat with onions, fresh vinaigrette, crunchy farofa. Real northeastern food, the kind that feeds body and soul. They ate in silence for a few minutes, and Manu noticed that Felipe ate with appetite, without fuss, appreciating every forkful. "Do you live in Recife?" she asked, breaking the silence. "I do. In Boa Viagem, in an apartment too large for just one person. And what do you do for work?" "Civil construction. My family has a company, Cavalcanti Engenharia. Have you heard of it?" Manu shook her head no. She wasn't the type to pay attention to company names. "It's one of the largest in the state. My grandfather founded it in the 60s, my father expanded it, and now I run it. Or I'm supposed to run it, but—" He left the sentence hanging, stirring the beans without eating. But I don't know if that's what I want for my life. I never knew, actually. I just followed the path that was already laid out." There was a sadness in his voice that Manu recognized. It was different from hers, which came from lack. His came from empty excess, from abundance without purpose. "And what do you want?" she asked, genuinely curious. Felipe looked at her for a long moment. "I'm still discovering. But I know it has to do with feeling truly alive, with waking up and having a reason that isn't just money or status." "It must be hard," Manu said without irony. "Having everything but feeling like you have nothing." "It is. And I know it sounds like a rich man's complaint that I should be grateful for what I have, and I am in a way. But gratitude doesn't fill the void." "Exactly." They looked at each other, and in that moment Manu understood that, despite living in completely opposite worlds, there was a shared loneliness between them. Hers was material, concrete, made of unpaid bills and worried nights. His was existential, abstract, made of unanswered questions and a future that seemed already decided. "Are you married?" Manu asked because she needed to know. "I was. I got divorced 2 years ago." "Children?" "No. She didn't want them, and I didn't insist either. I think deep down we both knew it wouldn't work out." "Why did you get married then?" Felipe let out a humorless laugh. "Because it was expected. She was from a good family, a business graduate, beautiful, polite, everything my parents approved of. The marriage was more of a business deal than a union." "That's sad." "It is. But at least it was honest on her part. We ended on good terms. She's engaged again, actually, to a lawyer. I think they'll be happy." Manu finished eating, pushing the empty plate aside. "And you, are you happy?" The question caught Felipe by surprise. He was silent for a while, looking at his own hands on the table. "I was on autopilot until I met you. Now I don't know if I'm happy, but at least I'm awake." The weight of that confession hung between them. Manu didn't know what to say, how to respond to something so deep coming from someone she barely knew, but at the same time, she felt she did know him, as if the short conversations by the roadside, the repeated visits, the exchanged glances, had built an understanding that words couldn't yet reach. "I need to go back," Manu said, checking the time on her simple cell phone. "It's been over an hour." Felipe paid the bill, insisting that he was the one who had invited her, and they drove back in silence to the stall. When they arrived, there were 2 cars waiting, customers Manu recognized as regulars. She apologized quickly and went back behind the counter, assuming her natural position, serving with her usual smile. Felipe stayed nearby, observing. He saw how she treated every customer with attention, how she remembered names, how she joked with one, consoled another who complained about traffic. It was a natural talent, that ability to make people feel seen. And he realized with an uncomfortable clarity that he had never made anyone feel that way. He had always been efficient, professional, but never truly human. When the movement slowed down, it was past 3 in the afternoon. The sun was milder, but it was still hot. Felipe was still there, sitting on the bumper of his own car, answering emails on his phone, but without real concentration. "Don't you have to work?" Manu asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. "I do, but I'm stalling." "Why?" "Because I don't want to leave yet." His honesty always caught her by surprise. Manu approached, leaning against the side of the combi, keeping a safe distance. "Felipe, I need to ask something." "Go ahead." "What do you want from me?" The question was suspended in the air between them, direct and necessary. Felipe put the phone in his pocket and stood up, walking until he was facing her, but without invading her space. "I want to get to know you better. I want to understand how you manage to be so strong. I want—" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I want to feel that my life has meaning, and somehow you make me feel that." "That's not fair to me." "Why?" "Because you're putting a weight on me that I didn't ask to carry. I'm not your salvation, Felipe. I'm just a woman trying to survive." "I know, and that's not what I'm asking. I don't want you to save me. I just want I to be near you to see where this goes." Manu crossed her arms, protecting herself from that vulnerability he offered so openly. "I don't know if this is a good idea. Because of the difference between us? Because of everything. You live in a world I don't even know. I wake up at 5 in the morning to make tapioca. You live in an apartment in Boa Viagem. It doesn't make sense. But what if I don't care about that? But I care, because I've already seen where this leads. A poor woman who gets involved with a rich man always ends up badly. Always." Felipe took a step forward, and Manu saw something different in his eyes. Determination. "I'm not rich, man. I'm Felipe, and you're not poor woman. You're Manu. And if you give me a chance, we can find out who we are when we take those labels off." She wanted to say no. Every rational part of her being screamed to say no, to protect herself, to not let herself be carried away by beautiful words from a man who could tire of her in a week and go back to his luxury life without looking back. But there was another part, small and scared, that wanted to say yes. That was tired of living just to survive. That wanted just once to know what it was like to be truly seen, to be desired, to be important to someone. "I need to think," was what she said. "All right, I won't pressure you. And you need to stop coming here every day." Felipe smiled sadly. "I'll try, but I promise nothing." He got into the car, started the engine, and before leaving, lowered the window. "Manu?" "Yes?" "Thank you for giving me the chance to know you. Even if you decide you don't want anything with me, it was worth it." And he drove away, leaving Manu alone with her confused thoughts and a heart that beat faster than it should. That night, when she got home, Donna Celia was waiting in the kitchen with that mother's look that knows when something is different. "Did something happen, girl?" Manu took off her shoes, sat at the table, and for the first time in a long time didn't know what to say. "There's a man showing up at the stall." Donna Celia raised her eyebrows. "What kind of man?" "The kind who shouldn't be looking at me." "Rich?" "Very." "And you? Are you looking back?" Manu closed her eyes, tired. "I don't know, Mother. I don't know what I'm feeling." Donna Celia reached out her trembling hand and held her daughter's. "What are you afraid of?" "Of getting hurt. of creating hope and then losing everything, of being used. And what if it's none of that? What if it's for real? People like me don't have happy endings with people like him, Mother. That only happens in soap operas. Or it happens in life when we have the courage to believe. Manu looked at her mother, seeing the wisdom accumulated in years of suffering and unshakable faith. "I'm afraid," she admitted with a small voice. "I know, daughter, but fear can't be the only thing that guides your choices. Sometimes God puts people in our path for us to learn, grow, and truly live. You can't know if that's it without giving it a chance." Manu slept poorly that night, tossing and turning, reliving every conversation, every look, every word said and unsaid. And for the first time in 7 years, her dreams weren't about bills to pay or tapiocas to make, but about a pair of light brown eyes and a smile that made her forget to be afraid. The next morning, when she reached the road, the black car wasn't there, nor on Thursday, nor the following Tuesday. Felipe had kept his word. He had given her space, and it was his absence that made Manu realize how much she had already grown accustomed to his presence, how the days seemed longer, emptier, less colorful, how she found herself looking at the road, hoping to see that car appear on the horizon. It took 2 weeks for her to admit to herself she missed him. Not the money, not the status, but Felipe. The way he listened, how he made her feel that her words mattered, how he looked at her as if she were the most interesting person in the world. That was when she decided. On Friday afternoon, after closing the stall, Manu took her cell phone and typed a message to the number he had left weeks ago. "If the invitation is still standing, I accept getting to know you better." The reply came in less than a minute. "It's standing and I'm on my way." Manu looked at the empty road, her heart beating hard in her chest, knowing she was about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And for the first time in a long time, she chose to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something beyond just surviving. Maybe she deserved to live. Felipe arrived in less than 40 minutes, which meant he had driven well above the speed limit. When he got out of the car, there was an urgency in his movements, as if he feared Manu might change her mind if he took too long. She was still putting away the last utensils in the combi when he approached, hands in his pockets, that restrained smile she was starting to know. "Hi," he said, simple as that. But there was so much weight in that word. "Hi?" she replied, closing the rear tailgate of the combi with more force than necessary, trying to hide her nervousness. "So, you gave me a chance." "I did, but let's go slow, okay? No expectations, no pressure." "Agreed." They stood there in a silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just loaded with possibilities. It was Manu who broke the moment. "Do you want to accompany me home? I need to take the combi, change clothes, take care of my mother. Then we'll see what we do." "I'll go wherever you go." Manu's house was in a simple neighborhood on the outskirts of Bezerros, an area where the streets were made of irregular cobblestones and the houses were squeezed together. It was a small 2-story house, painted faded yellow, with an iron gate in front and a tiny backyard in the back. Felipe parked the car on the street and looked around, noticing the curious looks from the neighbors. A black BMW on that street was as common as snow in the Sertão. "They'll talk," Manu warned, opening the gate. "They're already talking, for sure. Do you care?" "I care about my mother not being judged because of me. The rest is noise." Donna Celia was sitting in the living room, watching the 6 o'clock soap opera on an old TV. When she saw Felipe enter behind Manu, her eyes widened, but she said nothing, only gesturing for him to sit on the 2-seater sofa, covered with a crochet blanket. "Mother, this is Felipe. Felipe, my mother, Donna Celia." Felipe extended his hand, and Donna Celia shook it with the strength her trembling hands allowed. "Pleasure, Donna Celia. Manu told me a lot about you. I hope it was good things," she said with that maternal tone that investigated more than words let on. "Only the best." Manu went up the creaking stairs to the 2nd floor, where her small room was. She swapped her work clothes for jeans and a simple blouse, redid her ponytail, and put on subtle lipstick. She looked at herself in the foggy mirror and wondered what Felipe saw when he looked at her. An ordinary, tired woman with rough hands from so much work. Or could he see beyond that? When she came down, she found Felipe and Donatelia talking. It wasn't polite conversation. Her mother asked direct questions, without beating around the bush, and Felipe answered with an honesty that surprised her. And your family, young man? What do they think of you coming here to the interior? They don't know yet, but when they find out, they won't like it. Why? Because they won't understand. My family measures a person's value by their bank account. Donna Celia made a noise of disapproval. Then your family is looking in the wrong place. Felipe smiled genuinely. You're right, ma'am. Manu watched the scene with a mixture of relief and apprehension. It was important that her mother approved, but at the same time, it made everything more real, more concrete. He was no longer just a man who stopped at the stall. He was someone sitting in her living room talking to her mother, occupying a space that hadn't existed before. Mother, I'm going out for a bit. Do you need anything first? Only that you come back in one piece, Donna Celia said with that look that said more than 1,000 words. Felipe and Manu walked down the street under a sky that was beginning to take on orange tones from the sunset. He had left the car parked, understanding without words that in that place, walking was the natural way to be. Your mother is strong, Felipe commented. She had to be. When my father died, she could have collapsed, but no, she stayed firm for me. And you stayed firm for her. It's what you do for those you love. They walked to a small square in the center of the neighborhood, with concrete benches and a rusty playground, where children played under the watchful eyes of their mothers. They sat on a distant bench, watching simple life happen around them. I want to show you my world too, Felipe said suddenly. I don't know if I want to know it. Why? Because I'm afraid of feeling out of place, of realizing how different our lives are. Or you might realize that in the end they aren't so different, that everyone wants the same things, to be seen, to be loved, to have a purpose. Manu looked at him, seeing the sincerity written in those clear eyes. Do you really believe that? I do, and I want to prove it to you. In the following days, Felipe became part of Manu's routine in a way that seemed both natural and surreal. He showed up at the stall no longer as a customer, but as company. He helped carry things, talked to the regular customers, learned about her work. And Manu noticed with surprise that he wasn't faking interest. He was genuinely curious, wanting to understand not just what she did, but why she did it that way. It was on a Tuesday, 2 weeks after that message, that everything began to get complicated. Manu was serving a customer when a car stopped next to the stall. Out of it stepped a woman of about 35, with perfectly brushed blonde hair, designer clothes, and huge sunglasses. She looked around with an expression that mixed disdain and curiosity. So this is it, she said, taking off her glasses and looking directly at Felipe, who was sitting on the combi's bumper looking at his phone. Felipe looked up and Manu saw his expression change. Surprise, discomfort, something close to guilt. Camilla, what are you doing here? I came to see with my own eyes. I thought Roberto was exaggerating, but apparently not. Manu felt her stomach tighten. She didn't know who this woman was, but by the way Felipe stood up, tense, it wasn't good news. You need to leave, Felipe said, his voice low but firm. I need to talk to you in private. We have nothing to talk about. Camilla looked at Manu for the first time, really looked, and the contempt in her eyes was so explicit it hurt physically. So it's true, you're getting involved with her. Careful, Felipe warned, taking a step forward, placing himself between Camilla and Manu. Careful what you're going to say. Your father is furious, your mother is falling ill, and here you are playing poor with a... She didn't finish the sentence, but the intention was clear. Manu felt her blood boil. She walked around the counter and stood facing the woman without fear, without submission. So you don't know me. You don't know my life, my story, my character. So I suggest you keep your opinions for those who asked for them. Camilla laughed, a humorless sound. Look at that, she has a mouth. I have a mouth, I have dignity, and I have pride. 3 things money can't buy. Camilla, leave, Felipe repeated, his voice harder now. Now. You'll regret this, Felipe. You're going to throw away everything your family built, everything you have because of an adventure. It's not an adventure, and even if it were, it's none of your business. Your ex-wife is right to be concerned. You're playing the fool. You're not my wife anymore, and what I do with my life doesn't concern you. Camilla put her glasses back on, looked at Manu once more with evident disdain and got into the car. Before leaving, she lowered the window. When you get tired of this game and come back to reality, don't come looking for me. And she drove off, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a heavy silence. Manu went back behind the counter, her hands trembling with contained rage. Felipe approached, tried to touch her arm, but she pulled away. "No. Manu, I'm sorry, I didn't know she was coming here." "Who was she?" "My ex-wife. She said your father is furious, that your mother is falling ill, that you're throwing everything away." "It's a lie, manipulation." "Is it? Or is it the truth you didn't want to tell me?" Felipe passed his hand over his face, exhausted. "My family knows I'm coming to the interior. They don't know the reason. When they find out, they'll try to stop me." "And you? Will you let them?" "No, but I'm also not going to pretend it will be easy." Manu felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not there, not in front of him, not giving that woman the satisfaction of having shaken her. Maybe she's right. Maybe this is just you playing at having a different life, and when you get tired you go back to your world and I stay here, with my broken heart and my destroyed reputation. You don't believe that. I don't know what to believe. You barely know me, Felipe, and I barely know you. All this could just be— "It's not," he interrupted, holding her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "It's not a game, it's not a pastime, it's not an escape. It's real. What I feel for you is real. I don't even know what you feel. I know that for the first time in years I wake up wanting to live the day. I know I think about you all the time. I know that when I'm near you, everything makes sense. Isn't that enough?" "I don't know. I don't know if it's enough to face everything that's coming." A customer approached, breaking the moment. Manu pulled away from Felipe, wiped her eyes quickly and went back to work with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She served the tapioca, made the juice, charged the fair price, but her hands were shaking. Felipe stayed there the rest of the afternoon in silence, just watching. When she closed the stall, he helped load the things, followed behind her to the house, and waited while she put everything away. "Manu," he called when she was about to go inside. "Yes, I'm going to resolve this with my family. I'm going to make it clear that you're not a phase, not a whim, and if they don't accept it, that's their problem. And if you have to choose, then I choose you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning and promise. Manu wanted to believe, wanted to dive in head first, but she was too afraid. "Give me time," she asked, her voice small. "I need to think." Felipe nodded, visibly hurt but respecting her. "As much time as you need." That night, Manu talked at length with Donna Celia. She told her about Camila, about the hard words, about the fear she was feeling. "Mother, what if I give in and he abandons me? What if all this is a lie?" Donna Celia held her daughter's hand with all the strength her sick hands allowed. "And what if it's true? What if it's the chance of your life to be truly happy?" "I don't want to suffer." "No one does, daughter. But life doesn't come with a guarantee. We can only choose if we're going to live with fear or if we're going to have the courage to take a risk." "I'm so afraid." "I know, but look into my eyes and tell me, do you think that young man is lying?" Manu thought of Felipe, of every conversation, every look, every gesture, in the way he treated her mother with respect, how he learned about her work with genuine interest, how he never tried to buy her affection or use his money as a bargaining chip. "No, I think he's being truthful. Then maybe it's worth the risk." The next day, Manu didn't go to work. She took a bus to Recife, asked Felipe for his address by message, and went to his apartment in Boa Viagem. She needed to see his world with her own eyes, to truly understand who that man was before making any decision. The building was imposing, with a marble lobby and a doorman in a suit. She gave her name, and the doorman, after confirming with Felipe, let her up. The elevator was mirrored, and Manu saw herself reflected from all angles, dressed in her best clothes, which still seemed too simple for that place. Felipe was waiting for her at the door of the 15th floor apartment. He was barefoot, in shorts and a t-shirt, his hair messy, an expression of genuine surprise. "You came?" "I came to see where you live." He let her in, and Manu stood in the hall looking around with wide eyes. The apartment was huge, decorated with modern furniture, light wood floors, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the sea. It had 3 suites, an American kitchen equipped with appliances she only saw in magazines, and a spacious balcony with a barbecue grill. It was beautiful, and empty, so empty it echoed. "It's very big," Manu said. "It is, and very lonely." She walked to the window, looking at the blue sea down below. The tiny people on the beach, the whole world seeming small from that height. You have all this and yet you're unhappy. I was until I met you. Manu turned to him and saw absolute truth in his eyes. There was no more doubt, no more fear. There was only a man and a woman from completely different worlds, but who somehow fit together perfectly. "Kiss me," she said, surprising herself. And he kissed her. Slowly, carefully, like someone holding something precious that might break. And Manu felt in that kiss all the promises that words couldn't make. She felt that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this. When they pulled apart, she had tears in her eyes. "I choose to believe you," she said, "but if you hurt me, I won't survive it. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making it worth it." And there, in that empty apartment facing the sea, two worlds began to merge, defying all odds, all expectations, all judgments. Because true love doesn't ask permission to exist. It simply happens, transforming everything around it. The following 2 months were the most intense of Manuela's life. Felipe became part of her routine permanently, not just as a boyfriend, but as a true partner. He woke up early to help her prepare the tapiocas, learn to make the batter the right way, to calculate portions and to talk to the customers. At first, people found it strange to see a clearly wealthy man working at a roadside stall, but over time they got used to it, because it was impossible not to notice the sincerity with which he was there. Manu discovered a side of Felipe that he himself didn't seem to know. He was funny when he relaxed, had a natural talent for making people laugh, and told stories of his privileged childhood with a mix of nostalgia and criticism. He liked country music, something he had never admitted to his family. He knew how to cook, though he rarely did, and he had a vulnerable side that he hid under layers of control and professionalism. She also let him into parts of her life she kept guarded. She took him to church on Sunday, and he sat beside her and Donna Celia, singing hymns he didn't know but trying to follow along. She introduced him to the neighborhood friends, to the neighbors who were practically aunts, to the people at the market where she bought ingredients, and she saw, with a mixture of pride and amazement, how he treated everyone with the same respect, without distinction, without arrogance. But the world outside wasn't willing to leave them in peace. The first story appeared on a gossip blog in Recife, a blurry photo of Felipe at the stall with the headline, "Heir to Cavalcanti Engenharia abandons office for tapioca stall." It was sensationalist, manipulated, but it had enough truth to cause damage. In 2 days, the story spread. Other blogs replicated it, social networks commented. Even a serious newspaper did a story on entrepreneurs seeking simplicity. Felipe's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends wanting to know if it was true. Confused work colleagues, and finally, inevitably, his parents. Manu was at the stall when he answered the call. She saw his expression change, his jaw tighten, his eyes harden. "I'm not going to discuss this over the phone, Father," he said, his voice controlled but tense. "If you want to talk, we'll talk in person." He hung up and stood there, looking at the phone as if it were a bomb about to explode. "They want me to go there tonight, a family meeting." Manu felt her stomach turn. "Are you going?" "I have to, but you're coming with me." "Felipe, no. This is between you and your family." "No, this is about us, and I'm not going to leave you out as if you were a dirty secret I'm ashamed of. Your family will hate me. My family will have to accept me as I am. With you." The Cavalcanti mansion was in Casa Forte, a noble neighborhood of Recife, surrounded by high walls and security cameras. When Felipe parked in the spacious garage, Manu had to take 3 deep breaths before she could get out of the car. She was wearing the best clothes she had, a simple navy blue dress she had bought for a wedding years ago, high heels that hurt her feet, and her hair tied in a bun that Donna Celia had helped her make. Felipe held her hand firmly as they walked to the entrance. "You're incredible. Don't let anyone make you forget that." The door was opened by a uniformed maid who led them to a huge room, decorated with antique furniture and expensive paintings. There were Felipe's parents and also his younger brother, Roberto, the same one who had apparently told everything to Camilla. Felipe's father, Augusto Cavalcanti, was a man of nearly 70, tall with an imposing presence, completely white hair, and eyes that evaluated everything with business-like coldness. His mother, Beatrice, was an elegant lady with dyed blonde hair, discreet but very expensive jewelry, and an expression of someone smelling something unpleasant. "So this is her," Augusto said without getting up from his armchair. "Father, Mother, Roberto, this is Manuela. Manu, my family." Manu extended her hand, but no one shook it. The silence was icy, cutting. "Sit down," Beatrice said, more of a command than an invitation. Manu sat beside Felipe on the sofa, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of appearing intimidated, even though she was trembling inside. "Felipe," Augusto began, completely ignoring Manu's presence, "you're going to explain to me what is happening, and don't come to me with pretty stories. I want the truth. The truth is that I fell in love, and for the first time in my life I'm truly happy." "Happy?" Roberto let out a dry laugh. "You're making yourself look ridiculous. You've become a meme on the internet, you know. People are making fun of you." "I don't care what strangers think." "But you should care about the company," Augusto said, his voice rising. "About the family's reputation. You are the vice president of Cavalcanti Engenharia. You have responsibilities. Responsibilities I never chose. You were born with privileges. That brings responsibilities along with it. Or it brings a prison disguised as an opportunity." Beatrice stood up, walking to the window, her hands trembling with contained rage. "You cannot be serious, throwing away everything, absolutely everything, because of... Finish the sentence, Mother. Because of what? Because of a girl who has nothing, who comes from nowhere, who wants to take advantage of you." Manu felt the anger rise in her throat, but Felipe squeezed her hand, silently asking for calm. "You don't know Manu. You don't know anything about her life, about her character. I know she works at a roadside stall," Beatrice said with evident disdain. "I know she lives in a poor neighborhood. I know she has no education, no prestigious family, absolutely nothing to offer beyond what is obvious." This time it was Manu who spoke, her voice firm despite the hurt. "You're right. I don't have money. I don't have an important last name. I didn't study at a private school or go to college. But I have dignity. I have honor. And never, ever did I ask Felipe for anything other than honesty." "Honesty?" Roberto laughed. "You've been with him for 2 months and you're already news. Is that honesty? I didn't call the press. I didn't make a scene. I'm just living my life. Your life now affects ours," Augusto said, looking directly at Manu for the first time. "And I will not allow an opportunist to destroy everything we've built in 3 generations." Felipe stood up, furious. "She is not an opportunist. She refuses my money. She refuses gifts. She refuses anything she didn't earn with her own work." "Of course she refuses," Roberto said, cynical. "It's the perfect strategy. Play hard to get until you fall in love for good and put her in your will." Manu also stood up, unable to take it anymore. "I don't want anything from you. I don't want money. I don't want an inheritance. I don't want to be part of this family that measures love in bank accounts." "Then why are you here?" Beatrice asked, venomous. "If you don't want anything, why don't you leave my son in peace?" "Because I love him," Manu said, her voice breaking for the first time. "Because for the first time in my life I found someone who makes me want to be more than just a survivor. And because he chose to be with me, even knowing he was going to face people like you." The silence that followed was deafening. Augusto stood up, imposing. "Felipe, you have a choice to make. Either you go back to your life, take on your responsibilities at the company, and forget this story. Or you leave this family, give up your inheritance, your last name, everything." "Father, you cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. You choose, her or us." Felipe looked at Manu, and she saw in his eyes all the anguish of that impossible decision. She knew what he should choose. She knew it wasn't worth destroying a family, giving up everything, because of a relationship that was only 2 months old. "Choose them," she said softly. "Choose your family, Felipe." "No. Choose your family. I'll be fine." "No, I choose you." And there, in that ostentatious room, before his horrified parents and incredulous brother, Felipe made a choice that would change his life forever. "Then it's decided," Augusto said, his voice hard as stone. "You have until Friday to take your things from the apartment. It belongs to the company. Your car, too. Your credit card will be cancelled, and you are officially fired from Cavalcanti Engenharia." "Augusto," Beatrice exclaimed, shocked. "You can't do that." "I can and I will. He wants to live like a poor man, let him, without the help of the family." Felipe said nothing. He just took Manu's hand and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. "When you are ready to accept that happiness has no price, I will be waiting. But until then, I choose to truly live." They left under the petrified gaze of the family, and only when they were inside the car, far from that house, did Manu finally break down. She cried like she hadn't cried in years, with deep sobs that shook her whole body. "You shouldn't have done that," she said through tears. "You just lost everything." "I didn't lose everything. I still have you. I'm not worth that. I'm not worth you losing your family, your money, your life." Felipe stopped the car on the shoulder, held her face with both hands, forcing her to look into his eyes. "You are worth more than all of that combined, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." But life wasn't willing to make it easy. The following week, the story leaked completely. Newspapers published stories about the heir who abandoned everything for love. Bloggers made videos. Social media exploded with opinions. Some thought it was romantic, most thought it was foolish, and many blamed Manu. The comments were cruel. They called her a gold digger, an exploiter, a woman who used her body to destroy a family. They said she had bewitched Felipe, that she only wanted money, that she was his destruction. Manu tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. Neighbors who were once friends now looked at her with suspicion. Customers stopped frequenting the stall. Even at church, where she had always felt welcomed, there were judgmental looks. And then, on a Tuesday that had started like any other, Donna Celia fainted in the kitchen. Manu found her lying on the floor unconscious, her small body appearing even smaller. She called the ambulance with trembling hands, accompanied her mother to the hospital, and waited for hours in the cold corridor while doctors performed tests. The diagnosis was devastating. The arthritis had evolved into something more serious, compromising vital organs. Donna Celia needed immediate treatment, expensive medications, and possibly surgery. The cost was astronomical, completely out of Manu's reach. Felipe arrived at the hospital as soon as he heard, and found Manu sitting in the corridor, her eyes empty, holding a paper with the budget for the treatment. "How much?" he asked. "No." "Manu, how much is needed?" "I said no, I won't accept it." "Your mother needs it. This isn't about pride." "It's exactly about pride. If I accept your money now, I'll prove that everyone is right, that I'm with you for interest. To hell with what others think." I can't accept it. If I accept, I'll never have peace again. I'll never know if you stayed with me out of love or out of guilt. I'll never be sure of anything." Felipe knelt in front of her, holding her hands. "Then tell me what to do. Tell me how to help you without hurting you." Manu looked at him, seeing all the pain, all the helplessness, all the love he felt. And she made the hardest decision of her life. "I think we need to take a break." "What? No?" "Yes, all of this is happening too fast. You lost everything because of me. My mother is sick, everyone is talking, I can't think straight." "Then we'll solve it together." "No, I need to solve it alone. I need to find a way to help my mother without depending on you. I need to prove to myself that I can." "And after?" "After we'll see. If it's meant to be, it will be, but now I need space." Felipe was silent for a long moment, tears streaming down his face without shame. "I will respect that. But you need to know I'm not giving up on you, never." They hugged there in the hospital corridor, saying goodbye without saying goodbye, knowing it might be the end but hoping it wasn't. When Felipe left, Manu allowed herself to cry. She cried for her sick mother, for the love she had to let go, for the life that seemed to be falling apart. But deep in the pain, there was a spark of determination. She was going to save her mother. She was going to prove her worth. She was going to show the world and herself that she was more than they said. And if after that Felipe still wanted her, maybe, just maybe, she would deserve that love. The next 3 months were the hardest of Manuela's life, but also those that most defined her as a person. She woke up at 4 in the morning, prepared everything for the stall, worked until 4 in the afternoon, went straight to the hospital to stay with her mother until 8 at night, and then went back home to do it all again the next day. She slept 4 hours a night, ate poorly, and was visibly losing weight. But she didn't give up. The community, which had judged her at first, began to change its stance when they saw her struggle. Donna Maria, the neighbor who made cakes, started bringing her ready-made food so she wouldn't have to cook. So Joaquim, the grocery store owner, let her pay for her purchases in installments without interest. The parish priest organized a donation campaign to help with the hospital costs. But it still wasn't enough. Donna Celia's treatment was expensive, progressive, with no end in sight. Manu had exhausted her savings, sold everything she had of value, and was still far from what she needed. It was Joanna, the teacher who always bought acerola juice, who had the idea. "Manu, have you thought about doing an online fundraiser? There are many people who know you who have been buying here for years. I bet they would help." Manu was resistant to the idea of asking for help publicly. It seemed like begging, like giving up her own dignity. But looking at her mother in the hospital bed, weaker every day, she understood that pride didn't save lives. She created the fundraiser with Joanna's help, a simple and honest description of her mother's situation, without excessive drama, just the truth. She posted photos of a healthy Donna Celia smiling in the kitchen and a realistic goal to cover the next few months of treatment. The response was surprising. In the first 2 days, she reached 20% of the goal. Old customers donated. People from the community contributed what they could, even if it was small amounts. But what really changed everything was when the story reached social media in a different way. A customer who was a journalist wrote a story about her, not focusing on the scandal with Felipe, but on the hard-working woman fighting for her mother. He spoke about her 7 years on the road, about how she maintained the stall with excellence, about her character. The story went viral not for sensationalism but for humanity. In 1 week, the fundraiser hit the goal. In 2, it surpassed it. People from all over Brazil were contributing, sending messages of support, sharing the story. Manu cried as she read every message, every word of encouragement, every cent donated by people who didn't even know her personally. Finally, she was able to pay for the complete treatment. Donna Celia began to improve slowly but consistently. The doctors became optimistic, and Manu, for the first time in months, was able to breathe. Meanwhile, Felipe's life followed a completely different but equally transformative path. When he left his parents' house that fateful night, he no longer had a luxury apartment, an imported car, or a full bank account. He had his clothes, some personal belongings, and the money he had saved in a private account over the years. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to start over. He rented a small apartment in Boa Viagem, 2 simple rooms, basic furniture. He bought a used car, an old but reliable Gol, and for the first time in his life, he had to think about how he would truly earn money, doing something that mattered. The answer came unexpectedly. During the months he spent with Manu, Felipe had learned a lot about micro-entrepreneurship, about the difficulties small shopkeepers faced, about how the lack of access to education and basic resources kept people trapped in cycles of poverty. He decided to use his knowledge in engineering and administration to create something useful. He founded an NGO called Construindo Oportunidades, building opportunities, focused on training low-income entrepreneurs. It offered free management courses, helped formalize small businesses, and gave consultancy to those who wanted to grow but didn't know how. He used his old connections, those who still respected him despite the scandal, to get partnerships, donations, and space for the classes. He worked as he had never worked before, not for money or status, but because he was finally doing something that mattered. The first class had 20 students. Street vendors, stall owners, seamstresses, hairdressers, people with potential but without opportunity. Felipe taught with passion, discovering he had a talent for educating, for inspiring, for helping others see possibilities. 3 months later, the NGO already had a waiting list. 6 months later, it had opened a second unit in Caruaru, and Felipe, for the first time in his life, woke up every day with real purpose. But Manu was always in his thoughts. He respected the space she had asked for. He didn't show up at the stall, he didn't send messages, but he knew about her through others, followed her struggle for her mother from afar, and rooted for her in silence. It was Roberto, surprisingly, who sought Felipe out first. He showed up at the NGO office on a rainy Tuesday, wet and visibly uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" he asked. Felipe received him with caution. The brothers hadn't spoken since that terrible night. "I came to apologize," Roberto said, straight to the point. "For what I said, for what I did. You were right and I was wrong." "What changed?" "Me. I spent these months watching you build something from scratch, watching her fight for her mother without accepting charity from anyone. And I realized that the problem wasn't you two, it was me, it was us. It was this empty life we lived thinking it was success." Felipe was silent, processing. "Dad is still furious. Mom cries every week, but I understand now. You found something real." "I did, and I lost it." "Do you still love her?" "I never stopped." "Then go after her. She asked for space, and you gave it. 3 months, I think that's enough time." Felipe thought about it for days. Was it? Would Manu be ready for him again? Or did she still need more time? The answer came unexpectedly on a Saturday afternoon. Felipe was organizing materials for a class when his phone rang. It was Joanna, Manu's teacher friend. "Felipe, you need to come to the hospital. It's Donna Celia. She's asking for you." He dropped everything and went, his heart racing, 1,000 thoughts crossing his mind. When he arrived at the hospital, he found Manu in the corridor, her eyes red from crying. "Is she okay?" was the first thing he asked. Manu nodded yes, but continued crying. "She woke up today and asked to see you. She said she had something important to say." They went into the room together. Donna Celia was lying in bed, visibly thinner, but her eyes shone with lucidity. When she saw Felipe, she smiled. "Come here, boy." Felipe approached, taking her frail hand. "Donna Celia, how are you?" "Better. The medicine is working. I'm going to survive." She looked at Manu, then at Felipe. "But I didn't come here to talk about myself. I came to talk about you two." "Mother," Manu began, but Donna Celia interrupted her. "Let me speak while I still have strength. You two are too stubborn for your own good. You," she pointed at Felipe, "stayed away because she asked, respecting her space. Noble but stupid. And you," she pointed at Manu, "sent him away because you were afraid of being weak. Proud but stupid too." Manu and Felipe looked at each other, surprised by her frankness. "Life is too short to keep proving a point," Donna Celia continued. "I almost died these last few months, and do you know what hurt me most? It wasn't the physical pain. It was seeing my daughter unhappy, alone, when she had someone who truly loved her. Mother, I needed to do it alone." "And you did. You proved you are strong, independent, capable. But strength doesn't mean loneliness, Manuela. Strength is also knowing how to accept help, accept love, accept that you don't need to carry everything on your back." Felipe squeezed Donna Celia's hand. "I never wanted her to depend on me." "I know, boy, and she knows too deep down. But you both have to understand one thing. True love isn't about independence or dependence. It's about interdependence. It's about choosing to be together because it's better together than apart." Tears were streaming down Manu's face. "I'm so afraid, Mother." "Of what?" "Of not being enough. Of him waking up one day and realizing he can have something better." Felipe turned to her, holding her face. "There is nothing better than you. I spent 3 months trying to find myself, building a new life, and all I could think about was how much I wanted to share it with you." "I thought about you every day too," Manu admitted. "Every day I wanted to call, to run to you, to ask for help, but I was afraid that if I did, you would stay with me out of pity." "It was never pity, it was always love, from the first day." They looked at each other, years of wounds and fears between them, but also so much love it seemed impossible to contain. "Give me another chance," Felipe asked. "Let me show you that we can build something real. Not as rich and poor, not as savior and saved, but as equals who choose each other every day." Manu looked at her mother, seeking some guidance. Donna Celia just smiled. "Choose to be happy, daughter. You deserve it." And Manu finally allowed herself to believe that maybe she really did deserve it. She allowed herself to fall into Felipe's arms, feel the tight embrace, hear the words of love whispered in her ear. She allowed herself, for the first time, not to be afraid. "I love you," she said, and the words came with ease, without weight, only truth. "I love you too, so much it hurts." They stayed there hugging, Donna Celia watching with tears of joy, and for the first time in months everything seemed possible again. In the following weeks, Manu and Felipe rebuilt the relationship on a more solid foundation. He introduced her to the work at the NGO, and she fell in love with the purpose, began to help, bringing the perspective of someone who truly lived that reality. Together, they made the organization even more effective, more human, more transformative. She took him back to the stall and he went back to helping, but now as a true partner, not a temporary visitor. They began to think about expanding the business, maybe hiring helpers, opening other units. Donna Celia continued to improve, and when she was finally discharged, Felipe was there to help take her home, the house that he now knew as well as his own, because it was where his heart was. The Cavalcanti family still kept their distance. Felipe's father was too proud to admit his mistake, his mother too hurt to extend her hand first. But Roberto had become an ally, visited regularly, helped at the NGO, and slowly worked to rebuild the bridge between the brothers and the parents. And Manu, who before was so afraid of not being accepted, discovered she didn't need the acceptance of those who didn't value her. She had her own self-acceptance, she had Felipe's love, she had a community that supported her, and she finally had peace with herself. Their love wasn't perfect, it wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, with daily challenges, differences to be navigated, prejudices to be faced. But it was true, and in the end, that was all that mattered. A year had passed since that day at the hospital, when Donna Celia had reunited Manu and Felipe again. A year of rebuilding, of learning, of love that grew not despite the difficulties, but through them. And now, on a sunny Saturday morning, everything was about to change once more. Manuela woke up early, as always, but not to work at the stall. Today was different. Today was the official inauguration of the Construindo Juntos, Building Together Community Center, a project she and Felipe had dreamed of and built over months. The space brought together Felipe's NGO, a place for vocational courses, a community kitchen where Manu taught other women to be entrepreneurs with food, and a living area for the community. The building was in Bezerros, strategically located between the neighborhood where Manu lived and the road where she had her stall. It had been renovated with the help of donations, volunteers, and also with part of the money left over from Donna Celia's fundraiser, which she insisted on passing on to help others. Felipe was in the kitchen of the apartment they now shared, a middle ground between the two worlds. It wasn't his parents' mansion, nor Manu's simple house, but a home they had built together, with furniture chosen carefully, decoration that merged the tastes of both, and above all, much love. "Nervous?" he asked, pouring coffee for her. "Dying. What if no one shows up?" "So many people will show up that we'll have to do crowd control at the door." "How are you so sure?" "Because I know you. I know the impact you have on people. Everyone who knows you wants to see you win." Manu smiled, still not completely used to the way Felipe saw her. Even after a year, it still surprised her how he saw things in her that she herself didn't see. The inauguration was set for 10 in the morning, but when they arrived at 8 to make final preparations, there were already people waiting. Neighbors, former students of the courses, local merchants, all wanting to help, participate, celebrate. Donna Celia arrived shortly after, brought by Roberto, who in recent months had become practically part of the family. She was much better, able to walk with the help of a cane. The medicine kept the disease controlled, and her smile was back. "Everything is beautiful, girl," she said, her eyes shining with pride as she looked around. "We did it, Mother, we really did it. I always knew you would. I was just waiting for you to believe it too." At 10 sharp, Felipe took the microphone to give the opening speech. Manu watched from the side, seeing how he had changed. The man she had met a year and a half ago, tense, controlled, living on autopilot, had transformed into someone light, passionate about what he did, connected with purpose. "When I stopped at that tapioca stall on the road a year and a half ago," Felipe began, his voice firm but emotional, "I had no idea that I was about to find not just the love of my life, but also the meaning of my life. Manuela taught me that success is not measured by how much you have, but by how much you give. That strength is not never falling, but always getting up. That true love is not about saving someone, but about growing together." He looked directly at Manu and continued, "And this center is proof that when we unite our differences, when we use our privileges to serve, when we choose love over fear, we can transform not just our lives, but the life of an entire community. The applause was long and emotional. Manu had tears streaming down her face without caring to hide them. Then came the surprise. A black car stopped in front of the center, and out of it stepped Augusto and Beatriz Cavalcanti. Manu felt her stomach turn. They hadn't been invited, not officially. Roberto had mentioned the event, but no one expected them to come. Felipe froze upon seeing his parents. In a year they had spoken only 3 times, brief, tense conversations. The wound was still open, the pride on both sides preventing complete reconciliation. Augusto walked toward the center with his upright posture, Beatriz beside him, and the crowd opened to let them pass. They stopped before Felipe and Manu, an uncomfortable silence settling in. It was Augusto who spoke first, his voice controlled but with a rare emotion. "Your brother showed me everything you have been doing, the people you have been helping, the lives you have changed." He paused, as if the next words were costly. "And I came here today to say that I was wrong." Beatrice held her husband's arm, silent tears running down her face. "I raised you to be successful," Augusto continued, looking directly at Felipe. "But I defined success the wrong way. I thought it was money, status, power. But seeing all this," he gestured to the center, to the people gathered there, "I realize that you achieved something I never could. You found purpose." Felipe couldn't speak, too much emotion closing his throat. Augusto then turned to Manu, and for the first time truly looked at her. Not with disdain, not with judgment, but with respect. "And I judged you without knowing you. I condemned you based on prejudice and fear. But my son showed me through his actions who you really are. A woman of strength, character, and unconditional love. And I apologize for everything I said, for everything I thought." Manu was in shock. That was the last thing she expected. Beatrice took a step forward, extending her hands to Manu. "Can I hug you?" Manu, still processing, nodded yes. And when Beatrice's arms enveloped her, she felt something she didn't know she needed. Acceptance. Not because she had changed who she was, but because she was finally truly seen. "Welcome to the family," Beatrice whispered in her ear. "For real this time." Felipe hugged his father, both crying without shame, years of distance and hurt beginning to dissolve. Roberto watched with a huge smile, knowing he had been a fundamental piece in that reconciliation. When they all pulled apart, Augusto had one more surprise. "I brought something," he said, taking an envelope from his pocket. "It's the deed to the building. It was in the company's name, but I transferred it to you two. Consider it an investment in the work you're doing, and an apology." Felipe looked at the envelope, then at his father, not knowing what to say. "I don't want your money, Father. I never did. I know that's exactly why I'm giving it. It's not to buy you back. It's to support something I believe in, which I finally learned to believe in. It was a moment of deep healing, of bridges being rebuilt, of families reuniting not out of obligation but by genuine choice." The inauguration was an absolute success. Over 200 people attended. There was food, music, joy. Manu gave a tapioca workshop, teaching her special recipes. Felipe presented the courses that would be offered, and for the first time, the two families, his and hers, coexisted harmoniously. In the late afternoon, when almost everyone had already left, Manu and Felipe went up to the roof of the building, where they had created a small terrace with a view of the road. They sat side by side, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "Do you believe everything that happened?" Manu asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "It feels like a dream, but it's real. Your family accepted you back, accepted us. And you, how do you feel?" Manu thought for a moment. "Relieved, happy, but mostly grateful, because even if they hadn't come back, I would have you, and that would always be enough." Felipe kissed her, soft and prolonged, savoring that moment of complete peace. "I have something to ask you," he said when they pulled apart. "Go ahead." He stood up and, to Manu's total surprise, knelt down. From his pocket he took a small velvet box. "Manu, since I met you, my life stopped being a sequence of empty days and transformed into a journey full of meaning. You taught me to live, to love, to be better. And I want to spend the rest of my life learning with you, growing with you, building with you." He opened the box, revealing a simple gold ring with a small diamond. Will you marry me? Manu couldn't stop crying. She looked at the ring, at Felipe, at the orange sky, at all the life they had built together. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. He placed the ring on her finger, and they hugged there at the top of the world they had created together, surrounded by the love that had been stronger than all the barriers. The wedding took place 3 months later, in a simple ceremony at the church of San Jose, the same one Manu had attended since she was a child. It wasn't luxurious, it wasn't ostentatious, but it was true. The pews were packed with people from both their worlds, friends from the community, former customers from the stall, colleagues from the NGO, and also the complete Cavalcanti family. Manu entered to the sound of simple music, led by Donna Celia, who, despite her cane, made a point of taking her to the altar. The dress was simple, white, without extravagances, but she had never been so beautiful. Felipe waited for her with tears in his eyes, Roberto beside him as best man. The vows were written by themselves, words from the heart that made everyone cry. I promise, Felipe said, holding her hands, to choose you every day. Not because it is easy, but because it is right. I promise to honor your strength, respect your independence, and be by your side in every battle. I promise to build with you, not for you. I promise to love you not despite our differences, but celebrating them. Manu, her voice trembling with emotion, replied, I promise to trust you, trust in your love, in your intentions, in our future. I promise to let you help me without feeling that I am losing who I am. I promise to grow with you, dream with you, and never forget where we came from. I promise to love you with the same intensity that I loved on the first day, multiplied by all the days yet to come. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the kiss was accompanied by applause, tears, and a joy that overflowed from every corner of the church. The party was on the street in front of Donna Celia's house, a community celebration with plenty of food, live music and dancing until late. Rich and poor, traditional family and humble neighbors, all together celebrating not just a union, but the victory of love over prejudice. That night, when they were finally alone in the apartment, now officially husband and wife, Manu looked at Felipe with a deep certainty. It was worth it, she said. Every tear, every fear, every obstacle, it was worth it. And there is still so much ahead, Felipe replied. So much to build, so much to live. Do you think we'll make it? Keep this love even when life gets hard again. I am sure, because we are not naive. We know there will be challenges, that there will be fights, that there will be hard days, but we also know that together we are stronger, and that is all that matters. 2 years later, the Construindo Juntos Community Center had become a national reference in social development. Manu had opened 3 more units for teaching gastronomic entrepreneurship, helping hundreds of women escape poverty. Felipe had expanded the NGO to 5 cities, impacting thousands of lives. The original stall still existed, but it was now run by a former student of Manu's, while she supervised and created new projects. The combi was retired, transformed into an exhibition piece at the center, symbolizing where it all began. Donna Celia was healthy, active at the center, helping where she could and being the matriarch loved by all. The Cavalcantis had become regular donors to the project, and Augusto, in a surprising move, had even started giving lectures on redefining success. And Manu and Felipe? They lived a simple life but full of purpose. They woke up early, worked hard, and returned home tired but fulfilled. They fought sometimes, like every couple, but always reconciled before sleeping. They dreamed together, planned the future, and most importantly, lived the present with gratitude. On an ordinary afternoon, Manu was in the kitchen of the apartment preparing tapiocas not to sell, but because Felipe had asked. He came in, hugged her from behind, and kissed her neck. I have a surprise for you, he said. Another one? Do you never tire of surprising me? Never. He turned her around, holding her hands. Are you pregnant? Manu's eyes widened. How do you know? Because I know you. I saw you nauseous in the morning, crying over nothing, eating strangely, and because, he smiled, I found the test hidden in the bathroom. She laughed, nervous. I was going to tell you tonight. I wanted to do something special. This is special enough. We're going to have a child, Manu, a child. They hugged, crying with joy, another blessing adding to the incredible journey they were living. And so as the sun set once more over Pernambuco, painting the sky in impossible colors, Manuela and Felipe looked to the future with hope. They had faced storms, overcome barriers that seemed insurmountable, and proven that true love knows no social boundaries. The girl from the tapioca stall and the heir to the construction company had built something much more valuable than wealth or status. They had built a life based on respect, purpose, and unconditional love. A life that transformed not only them, but everyone around them. And as Manu placed her hand on her still flat belly, feeling the new life growing there, she finally understood what her mother always said. Every encounter has a purpose, every difficulty is an opportunity, and love, when true, does not just transform two lives, it transforms the world. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but they were together,